A legendary weekend in the Lou. PGA Tour champions compete in the Stifel Charity Classic, presented by Compliance Solutions, September 4th through 7th, and COAR. Perform live with your Friday ticket. Visit StifelCharityClassic.com today.
Good morning, St. Louis, and welcome into the Randy Carricker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley, which kind of feels like a lie right now. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Brenden Schaefer. Randy Carricker out one more day. He'll be back tomorrow. Brooke will be back soon as well. We are brought here by DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours. We're right here in Missouri, which you can see on Brendan's hat that he is moving around.
Yeah, it's like I'm looking at the reflection of the hat, and it looks like it's kind of weird. I don't know what it is. It's like a glare, but that's okay.
Schaefer's young and hip, because you can tell by the rope hat.
Is that a thing?
It's a big thing for some people,
okay.
The rope hats.
I have a lot of them now. I don't know how it happened. Yeah, it wasn't on purpose, but
I think that's the issue, is that now as you go to buy a hat, and it's almost like the rope hat has been made the standardized hat.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I think that bothers people who think it looks...
Is that like a golf thing,
it's supposed to be like a fishing thing, isn't it?
I thought it was golf.
No, the rope hat's supposed to be fishing.
Really? Okay.
And I think people are really mad that it's become a golf thing.
Sorry.
I see golf people being very angry that their hats now have ropes on them.
I'm okay with it. In the All-Star game hat that I bought in Atlanta has a rope on it, and I just thought it's a nice hat.
Rope hats now.
I guess I'm a rope hat guy. Sorry.
I didn't expect that to be our opening segment, but I'll talk hats and things like that as often as possible. Yesterday we turned one of the cameras on my pair of shoes. Because I had to let everyone know what I was wearing on my feet.
STL Sports Fashion.
There we go.
Right here.
Thank you. Finally, we're getting, we had Sports Pub STL in the early days. That's where we talked about food, or Sports Grub STL. But now we have to change it up. I like STL Sports Fashion. How about that? Or STL Fashion Central.
There you go. That's the show today, everybody.
That's definitely not going to be the show today.
Okay.
The show today is is there. That's the show today. And also right below that, you can hit the like, the share, subscribe, also that bell button so you know whenever we go live. Because sometimes, like today, we go live a little bit later than we're supposed to. We're supposed to go live at 10 o'clock, 10:02. Yesterday we went live at 10:07. Today might have been like 10:06. I know the chat's probably chirping us about that.
Working on it.
But that's what the show is going to be today. And so let's start off talking about that. A lot of Cardinals, a lot of Mizzou. Anytime Brenden Schaefer's here, those are going to be the two topics we talk about a lot. We also are going to hear him do his monologue from Music Man.
We're not going to do that.
Very impressive. We're not going to do that?
I did it before, though.
God, that was
pretty
impressive.
Good, right?
Honestly, this is something that I think we need to record him doing and put out on the socials, because I like it when people have random talents.
Get
like
me
that.
on off Broadway. Okay, that's
Yes.
all I need. Not on Broadway, but on off Broadway.
Let's get you to the Fox.
The Fox.
Let's get you to the Fox.
I think the Muni. That'd be good.
Apparently, it's Randy's birthday.
Happy birthday, Randy!
Happy birthday, Randy!
I wouldn't be here either. Yeah.
I would.
That's not true. I think I was here on my birthday.
You were literally here on your birthday.
Neither here nor there.
You were exactly here on your birthday.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Cardinals game. They break their 5-game losing streak. They win 8-3 over the Marlins, who were cruising throughout July and into August. They've cooled down a little bit, and the Cardinals were able to jump on them last night. Matthew Liberatore, not the best start from him, but obviously better than what we've seen from his last few starts. It really was the bullpen that locked in, and obviously a pretty good overall game from the offense. You get that small ball fifth inning, an overall great game from Alec Burleson, and you get Nolan Gorman with the power hit at the end to close things out. But obviously the 4 scoreless innings to close out the game from the bullpen was really the big thing from last night.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really complete win. You got some efforts from all across your roster that had been lacking recently. Like in the Yankees series, you couldn't rely on the bullpen to be able to hold up. They did last night. You finally put a good number of runs on the board. You tacked on even after you had the lead. That was nice to see. You mentioned it, like you're playing the Marlins. The Marlins have trailed off a little bit back to what we normally would expect the Marlins to be doing. But in defense of the Cardinals and feeling good about a win over a team like that, it hasn't been the case every time you've played the bottom feeders that you've beat the bottom feeders. The Rockies series just last week comes to mind. And so being able to have a complete effort, no matter who it's against, counts for something, because and this was a comment, I'm kind of basing this little rant off of a comment from Twitter last night where somebody said, all they said was Marlins BTW. Like, hey, it's just the Marlins, by the way, which is totally true. But if the Cardinals would have said Rockies, by the way, in those 6 games against Colorado, instead of only winning 2, if they'd won 5 or 6, they'd be in a playoff race right now. But as it stands, they're very much on the outside looking in. So take advantage of the teams that you're supposed to be able to beat. And the Cardinals did that last night with a pretty collective effort from the team.
Also, across the month of July and like late June, how many good teams did the Marlins absolutely just bulldoze?
They were rolling through teams. I don't know. They really have fallen off, because
Yes,
I expected to look down and see that they had the record about the same as the Cardinals, but they're 7 games below 500 mark. The Cardinals are 2 games under, but a sweep, maybe they get back to 500. I'm not saying that, by the way, in the context of the playoffs. Like, it's okay to strive to say, hey, I want to be a 500 team. Now, there may be people who would argue differently that, hey, I want them to lose as many games as possible, get themselves more lottery balls in the draft lottery, and try to have another great pick again. Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility, but I think they proved it last year that with 83 wins, you can still sometimes end up in the lottery. So I would play it straight, in my opinion, for the most part, at least in the way that you're going about the day-to-day for the time being.
Graham says Randy's getting put on the 40-man for his birthday before JJ gets put on it. Guys, the 40-man is cluttered. We cannot find a spot for JJ Wetherholt. But today on his birthday, we're gonna get one for Randy Carricker. We're gonna move things around. We're gonna all say, I guess we have so many center fielders now, we can just say goodbye to Michael Ciani.
Calling out by
we're going to get Randy Carricker right on the 40-man for Michael Ciani. Speaking of those center fielders, they both each had a nice little play yesterday. We get Ryan Church, who's everyone talks about his defense, makes a big defensive play. And then Hampson makes an actual play from the plate. How about that?
Hey, it's nice to participate. It's good.
People are still not happy about him being here.
Well, he's here.
Yeah.
He's here for now,
You can't find a spot on the 40-man. And let's just get into that too, because Brendan Donovan heads to the IL.
Right.
That means the Cardinals have a spot. They can make a move. And at that point, you just got to get Jose Fermin up. If you have a chance to get Jose Fermin up, you have to take it, Brendan.
I mean, they've been very reluctant to do that all season long, right? From the beginning of the season, there was that whole deal where he kind of thought he was going to be on the team, and then
I forgot about that.
He wasn't on the team, and they didn't bring him up for a while, had good numbers in the minors. We've seen Fermin a couple of times this season. His numbers are good with St. Louis, but clearly, I mean, Rock, they went a whole weekend without Brendan Donovan, and Contreras was out for that period as well. Now, he came back last night, but they went a whole weekend without Donovan and said nobody is better than making a move and bringing up Fermin. And look, they were hoping that the same thing would happen with Donovan that happened with Contreras, where after a few days he would be able to rejoin the team and it would work out. As they go on the road trip, they realize Donovan has not progressed to the point where that is going to be possible. And so you reluctantly make the move at that time. And I get it, because Donovan's their best player. If he's not their best player, he's one of their best players. And so the possibility of having him for, 5-6 days instead of having to have him sit on the IL like he's going to do all week at this point, that's what they were striving for. That's what they were hoping to get. And frankly, when you look at the 40-man roster, this is how it ties back into the Wetherholt stuff for me. You look at the 40-man roster and you say, the guys that we could bring up for a Brendan Donovan or for, whoever the injured player might be, they're not going to be primary contributors for us. And so we'll kind of take the chance to play short for a few days and see if we can't get Donnie to the other side of that injury where he can come back and help us. The 40-man roster is supposed to be your 26-man, your active roster, and then some guys who are available to you in a pinch, like when players get hurt and you can call them up and they can be legitimate contributors. And then it's prospects who you had to protect because of the Rule 5 draft, but they're just not quite ready for the big leagues just yet. But for the most part, you want to be using your 40-man roster when the situation calls upon it. And that was the case here, where I just felt like the Cardinals were very reluctant because they looked at the options and said, well, we'd rather just go without Donnie for a few days and hope and pray that we can get him back, because that's going to be a more significant benefit to our team than anybody we could bring up from the 40-man. Unfortunately, the injury continued for as long as it did with Donovan, and they reluctantly made the decision. But that's the frustration, is like, if you don't want to use the 40-man as is, why are we kind of creating all this consternation surrounding Wetherholt, who frankly may not be ready for the big leagues? But the reason that he's not ready, to me, should not have anything to do with the 40-man roster. I know that there are people out there who disagree, but I think when we break it down, I look at that and say, I don't agree with that line of thinking.
Yeah, just being fair, I can't figure out the logic that John Mozeliak is coming from just from the 40-man excuse. Let's keep the potential things that could explain it. Just coming from the 40-man reasoning.
Let's start with that. Let's be fair to this.
I'm confused, and also I'll say that I'll add on this really quick. The other part of my confusion is if this is about protection years with young players, then we better see some other players get called up in September, like a Jimmy Crooks, because if that's what this is about, and knowing what you have for a player in their protection year when they got to put him on the 40-man. Seems like a pretty obvious guy to get, as many at-bats as possible in September to see, well, what do we have at a position where the future is 19 years old and 3 or 4 years away in Raniel Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, with Jimmy Crooks, what the conversation should be about for each individual player is, are they ready?
Mm-hmm.
Are they ready to contribute to the big leagues? I think there's a case to be made that Jimmy Crooks is not necessarily ready for everything that comes along with the catcher position at the big league level. Like, he would be coming in, he'd be game planning, he would be drinking through the fire hose. But is there a conversation to be had about, well, call up Jimmy Crooks? Maybe he's not starting every day, but you know what, the way that he might be able to learn some things about the way it operates in the big leagues, sitting back, watching Pedro Pages game plan, being around the environment, and then playing a couple of times a week to be able to get your feet wet. Like, there's a case to be made that would be valuable. It's up to the Cardinals to decide if Jimmy Crooks is ready for that. And like, that's the part of this that I don't want to get lost. I don't know for sure whether Jimmy Crooks is ready for that. We can sit on the outside and say it seems like it would be beneficial because, again, I wouldn't be calling on him to start every day. I would be saying, hey, look, we get it that at this point in your career, you're young enough that playing time regularly is valuable, and Crooks can get that in Memphis if he stays there the rest of the year. But I also think he's close to the cusp of he's going to have to go on the 40-man. And then he comes into spring training trying to win a job of some capacity, whether it's to be the starter, to be the backup. And so giving him some, on the job experience at the big league level in September, to me, would be valuable with Crooks specifically.
By the way, it's not just is Crooks ready to be like, is he better than Pages right now? Because you also have in their protection year is Bernal. Mm-hmm. So there's also a thing where, like, if you think Crooks is more MLB ready than Bernal right now, I think there's a point where using September to find out, is Crooks the guy we put on? Like, do we put both of them on the 40?
Yeah.
Or do we unprotect Jimmy Crooks because we protect Bernal because we see what Jimmy Crooks is at the major league level and we say this isn't, we can risk this guy going, being available to other teams. Like, there is another factor in the fact that you have another guy in his protection year at the catcher spot who so far isn't past Crooks, but might have a better ceiling.
Well, we'll get back to the Wetherholt part of this as well. But since we're kind of neck deep in the catcher stuff right now, if you bring up Crooks, he's on the 40-man. Now to get him off the 40-man, you'd have to expose him to waivers, which is not, that's a little bit different than the Rule 5 thing. That's because teams would readily take Crooks through waivers because they wouldn't have to keep him on the active roster a whole year. With the Rule 5, there's at least that impediment where it's like, if a team's going to take a guy, they have to know they're going to keep him on the 26-man roster the entire year, or they end up losing him back to the previous team. So you wouldn't put Crooks on the 40-man and then, decide whether or not to keep him. Once he's there, he's kind of stuck there. But you're going to protect him, and you're going to protect Bernal as well. And people might say, well, my gosh, that could be a lot of catchers on the 40-man. What people are forgetting is that Wilson Contreras is not one, and Ivan Herrera is not one. So, and then Pozo's done a really nice job. I don't know what his long-term future is going to be. He could be a casualty of the fact that they've just got a lot of catching prospects, and one of them needs to be the backup.
That would be 4 on the 40-man
It would be
roster.
4, and then I'm saying with Pozo, I'm not saying that he's not been a really nice player, but there will be decisions made about that if you've got 2 other catchers on the 40, and then Pages as well. I'm not saying that anybody's job is just, locked in stone for next year, but that would be kind of the way I would look at it, is like, can Crooks be ready to at least be a halftime catcher for next year? If so, does that sort of push out somebody else from that catcher room as we're talking about the 40-man? Because that's what we're going to get back to with Wetherholt. I'll let you make whatever point you're about to make, but that's the thing with Wetherholt is, like, there are a number of players that will need to be protected from the Rule 5 draft this winter. And that's why when Mozeliak talks about protection year, there's 5 to 7 guys, maybe more, that are in that conversation. My point would be, I think you can find the spots, but where were you heading with this?
Just one last thing on Pozo.
Yeah.
With the way that rosters are built today in Major League Baseball, and I'm talking about the actual Major League roster, can you have a guy who's just a pinch hitter? Because what if we just say Yoel Pozo is just a pinch hitter, essentially, and an emergency catcher?
It depends on what the rest of the makeup of your bench is, I would think, because right now you've got a guy who largely is just out there to play defense in Garrett Hampson, right? So if you had, and I hate to say it because people love to rip on Hampson, but if you had a guy that was like Hampson and could play outfield and infield and pretty much play just anywhere, does that afford you the luxury to say, hey, from the right side, we've got this guy who can come off the bench and he'll bat just about every game? And people will cry because there's 3 catchers on the team, I think is the direction you're going with that. If it was like,
I'm saying we should just delineate him. He is now just a pinch hitter.
Right. But frankly, that's kind of what they had earlier in the season when you had Herrera as part of the catcher mix. You had Pajes and you had Pozo. Pozo essentially, if I'm recalling this correctly, stayed for Luke and Baker when Herrera came back from the IL. And so people said, well, now you've got 3 catchers. What I wanted to see them do was use Pozo in that way, be willing to deploy him to bat whenever the situation demanded it. They didn't really do a ton of that. I think part of that was because you wanted to see the guys that were in your lineup play the whole game because that was sort of the runway angle, right? And that was the case for a little while. And then more recently, we've seen Ollie turn to Pozo when the situation calls for it. And more often than not, Pozo's doing a nice job at the plate. I just don't know, like, the whole bench, the whole roster has the potential to change between now and April. And so I don't know how to answer that. Like, could you do it in theory? Yes.
My entire question was because of the way that they've kind of not hamstrung, but the way that they've limited how the flexibility on major league rosters. Now I'm just asking is in 2025, 2026, can a Major League Baseball team afford to have a pinch hitter whose only other possible position is third catcher, emergency catcher? Like, can you actually have the flexibility?
Frankly,
or do you need 3 other bench players who can play multiple positions and hit the ball?
Right. Frankly, to me, having one that is a catcher is a benefit. It's a feature rather than a bug, because in a pinch, you could plug that guy behind the plate, and that allows you to use your roster straight up regularly without going, oh, we got to save a catcher, we got to hold the catcher back. So I actually don't think it's a problem for that pinch hit specialist to be a catcher or to have that tool in his bag. I think that's honestly a benefit and they also have an emergency catcher in Wilson Contreras that they'll never want to use. But in theory, like, again, I would love to see a team be creative enough to manage the roster that way. But that's Xbox stuff. I'm gonna be fair to, like, the Cardinals, fair to Oliver Marmol, and recognize that's kind of Xbox stuff. You're dealing with real people, real players, and we told Wilson Contreras you don't have to worry about catching anymore. Is it fair to him to say, oh, by the way, but like you could catch at any given moment. We're going to have to, prepare our roster as though that's a possibility for you. That's more Xbox stuff where it works when you're playing the video game, but doesn't really work in real life with real personalities, real human beings. I think that's maybe a little bit of a different conversation that we can get lost in sometimes in social media, podcast world. That's something to maybe pay some respect to. But no, like, in theory, yes, I think you could do it with Pozo, or in general, an MLB team could do that. I think the Cardinals have shown enough of maybe hesitance to really commit to that type of play. But if the roster fit better with platoon guys, like, you had just so many lefties and then the righties that were in there, you wanted to still be in there. And so I don't think they had a perfect setup with the roster in terms of the way that they would deploy that position until more recently. And so it's a long story short. Yes, I think it's possible in theory. No, I don't necessarily expect the Cardinals to have that be their plan A going into 2026.
All right, so back to the 40-man math around JJ Wetherholt.
Okay.
We've said it on this show many times. The fans have texted in. You can find 10 or 12 names currently on the 40-man that makes sense to free up rosters. Mozeliak, and you pointed to about 6 or 7 guys who are in their protection year. So by that math, there are still 3 to 5 spots open on the 40-man that could be JJ Wetherholt. So giving the benefit of the doubt to the argument,
okay,
what's the potential issue?
There's a lot of reasons why you might not promote JJ Wetherholt this year. One reason is that the guy that's in charge today is not going to be the guy that's in charge of the roster come November. And so if I'm Chaim Bloom, do I want to necessarily be hamstrung by a decision that Mozeliak makes to say, hey, if we do this, JJ Wetherholt's got to be in your starting lineup from day one in 2026, right? Like, if you're bringing him up now, this is precisely what happened with Mason Wynn at the end of 23, when the Cardinals that offseason didn't do anything else to address the shortstop position until late in the spring with Brandon Crawford. Why? Because they knew Mason Wynn was going to be their guy. Well, he hit 170. How'd they know? They just knew, and the proof was in their actions, right? With Wetherholt, that obvious opening isn't there yet. but we would have to believe that Chaim Bloom is going to reorganize parts of this roster in the offseason. We've talked about the glut of infielders. There's frankly a glut of corner outfielders, many of which are hitting left-handed. And so you have to kind of sort through some of that. Will that all happen in one offseason? I would argue it's difficult to have it all happen in one offseason, even if it feels like that's what they need, which is part of why when it was being reported that the Cardinals were getting interest in their left-handed hitting corner outfield bats at the deadline, I thought it would make a lot of sense to pursue something like that. Mo said, hey, we've got to be blown away, and we weren't, and so that's why we didn't move on any of those guys. But as you're thinking about what that glut could be, there's lots of places in our mind, Rock, that we can plug JJ Wetherholt into to begin next year. Again, if he's ready. That's the caveat that goes through all of this. He may just flat out not be ready.
Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I put a poll up a few minutes ago.
Okay,
that's been cooking for the last few minutes, and it's just if the Cardinals said JJ wasn't ready or didn't know, and I'm not saying, and listen, they shouldn't be public about that if they think that. So I don't expect them to.
You don't expect, to your point, you don't expect them to tell you in a radio interview or tell a beat writer, we just don't think this kid's ready. You don't think you're getting that quote. And we both, I think, are on the same page. It's fine not to get that quote.
Yes, because here's the thing. Because if you're JJ Wetherholt and they say that while you're mashing, it's going to screw with your head. And I'm not sure exactly how, but it might turn you into, hey, F these guys, I'm just going to keep on mashing. Or it could be, what do I have to do?
Right.
So it's not going to be public. But
managing personalities is part of the conversation.
If the Cardinals said that JJ wasn't ready or they didn't know if he was ready, would you be okay with him staying in Memphis?
Absolutely.
That's the poll.
Would I be? Oh, okay.
Yes. And that's the poll right now. Right now, yes is winning 58%, but 42% of people are saying no. That even if they said that, they would still want him up in the major leagues.
Let's change it from if they said that to whatever the universal truth is. We might not find it out because, like you said, they may not be out public with exactly the way that they view his progression, which we're agreeing is fine. I think the optics, when we've talked a lot about messaging with this organization being problematic in recent years, it's tough optics for a fan base when you point to it and say, well, it's not his protection year. That's what I've kind of harped on. But in fairness to that, is there a way that Mozeliak trusts himself to identify and describe it without throwing a player under the bus if their belief is that he's not quite ready or that he's just continuing to gain seasoning? That's totally fair. And that's why I, kind of talked about this in the video I posted to Twitter yesterday. That's where Mo may just have to eat it. If that's how they feel about it, he's going to have to do what he says publicly doesn't maybe match what's happening privately. And I don't know that to be the case, but, we're kind of talking through the situation and speculating about it because JJ Wetherholt is a huge topic right now. Cardinals fans are ready to move on to 2026 in many ways because they're underwhelmed by the team record this year. And so that's why we're talking about it ad nauseum, even though is it the most timely thing? Well, maybe because we are below 45 days remaining in the season.
Yes.
We are to the point where if the Cardinals believed he was ready, they could be bringing him up. And you did just have an infielder go on to the injured list. But Donovan going on the IL for 10 days, and people say, I can't believe they didn't bring up Wetherholt when you had Fermin. Fermin's not the guy that Wetherholt's going to be, so why wouldn't you give Wetherholt the playing time? Well, you also don't want Wetherholt to come up for 10 days and then Donovan's back, and then you go, well, what do we do? Is there playing time? Because what have we talked a lot about? There is a glut on the infield of guys right now, even with Arenado on the shelf, who's coming back soon in theory, that you don't have playing time for everybody.
Can I get a little?
You can do anything you want. You can do anything you want.
Is there a chance because the Donovan IL stint is backdated to
the 15th of August, which is that's 3 days. That's the maximum they allow you to backdate. So that's the reasoning for that.
And the 15th of August was game 1 of the Yankee series. Am I crazy?
I think that's
yes.
right.
So,
Well, spit it out.
I just feel like,
what do you want to say?
They now can use the optic excuse of, well, you don't want to call up JJ Wetherholt in an away series. He's got to make his debut at Busch. And it's like, well,
I don't think that's part of it.
You could have made that happen on Friday.
I'm throwing your tinfoil hat away.
Right,
I just don't think that's part of it.
All right.
It's bigger than that. It's bigger than, is JJ Wetherholt ready? Frankly, if you wanted to kind of ease him in, you bring him into the Marlins stadium where there's no fans there.
That was my thought yesterday with Joe. Was like he's used to minor league stadium. There's not a lot of heft. And I also threw out the optic side of what if he mashes down there and now the Cardinals salespeople can get a bunch of promos out there.
I don't want to do the ticket sales thing.
Come watch JJ.
No, I don't want to do the ticket sales thing because I don't think that's real. I don't think that's tangible. There will be some fans that probably purchase a ticket if he's there, but that's not driving. That's not the engine of the decision. No, but it's not even a part of it.
I'm not saying ticket sales. I'm saying just fan engagement.
All right.
I'm not saying the marketing, all the marketing stuff would be about ticket sales. I'm saying they get marketing stuff out that's saying JJ Wetherholt at home next week.
Totally.
Kind of thing. That's all I'm saying.
They could do that.
But the debut, you want the debut at home.
It's not part of the decision. I don't think any of that is part of the decision process. So let's talk about what Doug's got here. The struggle in September for JJ could be very beneficial. Aaron Judge was brought up, struggled mightily to hit, decided to revamp his swing, got together with his hitting coach to learn to hit. I can't speak to a lot of the Judge stuff. I do know that he's got that coach that has helped him. But let's talk about the struggle in September could be beneficial. Again, I don't even think JJ would have to come up and struggle. I think coming up and getting that experience was very valuable to Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn came into that offseason knowing what it was all about because he got to experience it for 5 weeks. That, I think, was beneficial to the progression of Mason Wynn. I think Mason Wynn was a kid that was drafted out of high school and played a lot of professional ball. JJ drafted out of college, but he was playing at West Virginia. He was playing at a very high level. We talk with Claibs all the time, says, look, you're playing ball at West Virginia. That's almost kind of like a double-A environment, which is why the Cardinals felt comfortable progressing. JJ skipped a level, did he not? He skipped high A, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly.
I got his stats in front of me right now.
And started at
no, he had 105 at-bats at Palm Beach. Yeah, so he skipped
high A was Peoria. He's never set foot in Peoria. He started this year in Springfield and then moved up to Memphis, where he's continued to be fantastic.
1,000 OPS and 100 at-bats.
Something that gets mentioned is like the type of pitching that he's facing. Like he's hitting all these home runs. Is it constructive to his progress to hit bombs off of guys in AAA who are just serving it up meatball style? And you're not necessarily like, that's really fun to watch. Is it always indicative of what he's going to be able to do when he comes to the big leagues? Not necessarily. In terms of like evaluating his readiness, that may be a reason that the Cardinals would say. I don't know if that was Kyle Reese that you said was kind of mentioning that on social media. And I think there's some merit to
pointed out
that
there's been some, he's gotten some meatballs that he's teed off on. I'm not saying he's
that's part of
overall.
Paul DeYoung got to the big leagues and stayed there because nobody could hit a meatball like Paul DeYoung. Nolan Gorman can crush a meatball, but sometimes they're going to pitch you tougher when you get to the next level. And I'm just pointing that out as like, we can't always just use AAA numbers to say that a guy is ready because the pitching there is fundamentally different. That's why those guys are there and not here.
But there's two sides of that coin.
Okay.
Which is, what is the benefit of him facing that pitching through September?
Sure.
What does it do to his development? And for a guy who's supposed to be your top prospect in the future of this organization, there's a benefit. Like you said, people say the benefit to the struggle. For me, it's just, like you said, if AAA pitching doesn't tell you who this hitter is,
right,
then you're not going to learn anything in this next month.
So here's what you can learn. And this is a little bit, little pie in the sky stuff, because the Cardinals coaching staff is not there in Memphis, but the coaching staff there is the extension of the St. Louis staff, where they can have conversation with those guys. How is JJ carrying himself? What does his daily work look like? A lot of it, Rock, is probably not stuff that's going to happen on the field.
Yeah.
And so, that's
Video
difficult.
Work,
that's
stuff.
Sure. What is his day-to-day look like? Okay. When he hits 2 home runs in a game, what does he do the next day? Is the work the same? When he goes 0 for 4, what does he do the next day? Is the work the same? What's he putting into it? What's he like with the guys? Nothing that I think he can do to like put it over the edge, but they're evaluating, right? They're saying this guy is relatively new still to professional baseball. This is his first full professional season, right? He was drafted in the middle of last summer, did what he did, and then has made the jump and is passing everything with flying colors. But it's very difficult to say, like, there could be other things going on. And this is not specific to Wetherholt. This is just the way it works. There could be other things going on other than what you see in the box score, which is difficult because as fans, we want to look at the box score and say, I see the OPS I want to see. They should call him up. He might not be ready, which is why I wanted to be like super contextual with this conversation, because I don't know today, sitting here talking to you on YouTube, whether JJ Wetherholt is ready to be called up to the big leagues. My lean would be, yeah, let's see the kid. But I could also respect that the Cardinals are going to have knowledge and information and an approach that I'm not always going to be aware of, and I'm okay with that. The part that I push back on is that we want to tie it back to the 40-man for a couple of reasons. One, if you're going to cite the protection year with JJ, in theory, that would mean you're going to wait until his protection year, which I know is not quite apples and apples, but obviously they're not going to do that. That would be September of 27, assuming no lockout. September 27, we'd be having this conversation going into 28 and saying it's going to be his 5th year. We're going to have to protect him from Rule 5. Obviously, that's not going to be his timeline. He'll be up far before that. So that's number one. Number two with that is this idea that the 40-man is in such a state that you couldn't find the spots either now or in the winter, because they're going to very likely put JJ Wetherholt on the 40-man roster at some time in 2026, even if it's not from day one. Doing it now, though, does complicate matters for Chaim Bloom because of the reasons I said a little bit ago. If you do it now, you darn well better have him on the 26-man roster and in your daily lineup to begin next year. Talent-wise, he may be ready for that even. But if Chaim Bloom's sitting there going, the previous guy couldn't figure out what to do with Arenado, so I'm going to have my work cut out with that. Is ownership going to be okay with just like a flat DFA if nobody wants him? Arenado playing third base for this team in 2026 doesn't make sense, I think, from a stylistic perspective of what we expect the roster to be. I know this has been runway year. Guess what? It may not be completely over, but next year should be the install year. If this was the runway to find out who we're going to install the offense next year. Arenado is not part of it in 27, 28, 29. So installing him for 2026, to me, and just clinging to this vestige of maybe we go 85 and 77 to make the playoffs is not the way that you should try to approach getting to that record. So Arenado probably shouldn't be the third baseman next year, but Chaim Bloom's got to figure out what exactly to do about that situation if that is the direction they decide to go. Nolan Gorman has been coming around at the plate. Is he your third baseman? Because that would be a spot that Wetherholt could play, but not if Nolan Gorman is there. So what do they do with Nolan Gorman? Does he hit well enough that they say, oh, baby, he's got trade value now. Let's move him because we do want to install on our offense JJ Wetherholt at third. Second base, is Donovan extended? I would never trade him, but is Donovan a trade candidate? Like, the point is that they've got all these things that they have to maneuver in addition to the 5 to 7 guys that need to be protected, which we'll talk about those guys too. It's a lot of balls in the air for Chaim Bloom, and to give him another clog, if you will. It's the good kind of a clog. It's a prospect that's ready for the big leagues if it's Wetherholt. But to give that to him and say, hey, we're going to add this guy to the 40-man, so you better start him in St. Louis next year, that I think is the complication that's very real for the Cardinals. I just wish the 40-man wasn't the reason or the excuse behind it, because they clearly are showing that the bottom portion of their 40-man is not something they think is valuable. They are just behaving in a way that says we want to make sure we're still hoarding these guys so we don't get made fun of when we dump them in the offseason for nothing, because that's going to be a bad look on the regime. Like, that is what I feel might be driving the conversation more. Is like, we've held Jose Fermin for this long. We are reluctant to ever use him, but if push comes to shove, we also don't want to get rid of him off the 40-man roster, even though we don't want to use him for the scenarios that we would need to use him. That's like the full circle thing for me when it comes to using the Wetherholt thing as a 40-man excuse or example.
A couple things. First of all, you saying 88 and 77, because it was the fact that you just pulled that out of nowhere made me go check.
That was just random.
Yes, it was. I was like, is that the Cardinals? Is that the record the Cardinals had the last time they made the playoffs? They've only gone 88. They've only gone 85 and 77 one time in their entire history.
That just felt like the thing that people say we're striving for the middle when they talk about the Cardinals. Okay.
85, 80.
Turn that off. What are you doing?
What's going on?
I don't know. I hear some noise from over there. Just turn it off.
It was 80, 85.
I'm sorry. I'm just like
85 and 77
from all over the place.
Sorry. Mason Windu, is this all about Arenado still? Is Arenado expected back soon? And are they going to play every day at third base, meaning no room for other infielders?
What do you think about that? What do you think? I don't know.
I have no idea how they get rid of him right now, because yesterday, talk about pie in the sky. Joe mentioned Lance Berkman, and I was kind of blown away that Berkman actually did drop to like a 413 slugging percentage that year in Houston and New York, and then he comes here in St. Louis and he immediately is hitting 540 again from the slugging perspective.
Yeah,
I just don't think that's possible with Arenado.
I think it is.
I don't know if it's there.
I think you get him in a different stadium. I think you could do it. And get him in a different stadium and get the shoulder healthy. Like, For
But
everybody,
what team's going to take that? What team's going to take that risk?
The team that's not paying him a lot of salary, and that's where ownership would have to come in St. Louis and say, we're going to eat it to clear the spot.
And this is my problem, because so payroll this year is around 140 million. I expect it to drop a little bit from that next year. I expect right now they have a 70 million committed for next year.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to expect 12 to 15 million for Brendan Donovan and an extension.
No. That's not right.
No.
What's he making this year?
Donovan making 3.
Yeah.
Or 2. You don't think he's going to get the extension?
Even if he got the extension, the money he would be earning in 26 would be a lot lower.
They would be a lot lower.
It would be reflective of like ARB-ish.
Yes, it would be
for 2 more years, and then it would bump up for the free agent years.
You're right about that.
But I also don't know if they're extending him. I can't predict how they're going to spend this winter. It's going to be a very interesting question.
I was just trying to figure out how they spend money this winter.
Yeah.
Donovan extension and a starting pitcher around
in arbitration, guys.
AAVs for those guys around, like the AAV for Donovan more like 10 million, I guess.
It's going to be like 6 million.
I'm saying across. I mean, the contract he signs, that'll be the average.
Okay,
value. I'm just doing that. And then the pitcher, you spend 12 to 18 million on that guy. I don't know how much more.
I don't know if they're doing that, but
and my point is if you don't even know how much they're doing that, then I don't think shipping you're counting 640 million to get rid of Arenado a reasonable thing.
Oh, yeah.
To expect.
I mean, it is probably what they should ultimately do.
It's what they should do. We know that.
But I think part of the reason, if we're talking about just the rest of this year, like getting Arenado back in there, because what if this whole period right now is about him strengthening up his shoulder. If that happens and they see a little uptick in the power, does it become easier to move him for something of value? I'm okay with that, I think.
I asked Joe, do we see Arenado play all 3 games at third base in a full series the rest of this season?
Yeah. I think you'll see him play almost about what he always has.
I think
you don't agree?
No, I agree we could see it. I think it's a mistake.
Oh, why? If you're trying to okay, let the JJ Wetherholt thing alone, which we'll still kind of circle back to it. If y'all have more thoughts on it, let us know in the live chat, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Why would it be a mistake if Wetherholt's not here to just continue to play Arenado at third?
Because you still have to find out what Nolan Gorman is. And more than that, you need to give Nolan Gorman that time, because the issue Nolan Gorman has right now is he has another throwing error last night. That's where I believe all his errors at third base have been throwing errors, not fielding errors. Correct?
Which is a little strange. All the ones I can remember.
He's got the arm.
He does have the arm.
He's dialing it in. He's trying to figure it out. You need to know what you have with Nolan Gorman at that spot, especially if you go to arbitration again with Brendan Donovan, which is, I think, would piss him off to a point where you'd pretty much seal his fate as not signing an extension with the Cardinals. So then JJ Wetherholt can play second base, and now you need a third baseman. So I need to know what Nolan Gorman is as a third baseman. I need him to get comfortable so I can know, does he have the arm, or were we wrong about the projection?
Let's say, and what's bummer right now about Donovan, again, I would never trade him, but I'm gonna walk into this world a little bit because I understand some people see it differently. And if you could imagine a world where the Wetherholt's ready soon, and they think he can be one of their best 4 or 5 hitters in their lineup. I'm not going to put on his back to have to be the guy coming in. But let's say he's going to be one of their better performing players at the plate, and he's ready, and he can play defensively second or third. It doesn't really make a difference. They think he's capable at both. It would make sense to go with Gorman and say, let's see if he can stick at third, because if not, he plugs into second, and then Wetherholt goes to third in a realm in which Donovan is traded in this winter. That's my thought, is like, if they're not going to extend Donovan, would they consider trading him off of an all-star season? Right now, his numbers are dipping, and so your trade value is certainly not what it was a month ago. But I do not believe still that they should trade Brendan Donovan, but I could see, like, from a puzzle perspective, those conversations could be happening.
They should keep the option open, though. And my point is that knowing what Nolan Gorman is lets them have the option at least. And more than that, and here's why. Because to your point about leverage and value, having the option gives them leverage in the discussion. Oh, we don't need to trade you Brendan Donovan. You're not giving us enough. We don't need to trade you Brendan Donovan. Teams can sense out the leverage factor of things.
I think that's true, but I also think teams are just going to still explore what makes sense for them as a team, rather than base it all around how much leverage they have over the Cardinals. And I think the Cardinals, in making trades, want to give them a little bit of credit to not say, well, we just have to do it because we already said what we were going to do with third base. But the problem is there's multiple layers of this onion that you have to peel back. First, you got to do the Arenado thing, and before we can figure out and that's still something that hasn't happened.
So that's my thing is I want to know
so
what
you want to
Nolan
find out about Gorman at
Yes.
third defensively.
Yes.
I want to find
He's got
out.
the bat.
He does. I mean, it looks
We
like he
know that.
does.
The bat plays.
He's OPSing 741 right now in a season where for a while he wasn't doing that, right? So it's clear that it seems like every night he's hitting an extra base hit and drawing a walk. So he's really come around offensively. I'd love to take a look at like his last month-ish on Baseball Reference and see what exactly the game logs say over this stretch, because it really feels like Gorman's been putting it together at the plate. And like everything we've heard when we talked with Chip Carey last week, Randy and I, this topic came up because he had just made the 2 throwing errors the night before that. And, Chip said exactly what I think is correct in terms of how the Cardinals are viewing it, that it's, Gorman, they want him to play third because they want to see it. And remember at the time, it felt like the Cardinals had just won game 1 over the Rockies. They were maybe surging to try and push for this wild card. And I was like, dude, I'd put JC at third because I want to see him win games. Like I was sucked into that for a moment. Then you lose 5 in a row and suddenly you're not in that place anymore. To where now definitely back to being evaluative on Gorman defensively at third base. But the other part of it is like, I do still want to see Arenado in there, because if I'm destined to try to move on from him, because it's the best thing for him to go to a place where A, stadium's a little bit more conducive to his power at this point, B, a team that's all in on trying to contend would make him really happy, and C, clears up a spot for the Cardinals for Gorman / Wetherholt, whatever it looks like. It seems like it would be best for everybody to find a nice soft cushion for Arenado to land via trade. But do you have to maybe let him play to show like, hey, teams, you want this guy still? Because I fully believe if Arenado moved, he would have a Goldie-like resurgence wherever he went if he landed in the right spot. I also can say that knowing that it wouldn't be a mistake for the Cardinals to move on from him, because they've got all of these other things that they're trying to explore with his position. And to move forward, you might have to take the step back first to say, hey, we don't know for sure what the defense of Gorman will be for a full year at third. We don't know for sure what Wetherholt's going to be as a rookie, but one of those guys has to be who you have manning the hot corner in order to move the organization forward and start to churn through toward what the roster will look like in a long-term perspective.
And essentially, so the conversation boils down to which is more valuable to the Cardinals, which is showcasing Nolan Arenado and potentially having to take less money to get rid of him.
Yeah, because that's just saving you money. You may not be recouping a prospect that you love either way.
Or knowing for sure what Nolan Gorman is going next year. That's the balancing thing they have to go forward. And so my question is to you, as somebody who's seen a lot more of these deals and knows a lot more than me, track record of getting players, getting teams to take
like
guys.
Building a trade value in 4 weeks.
Actually, I was more going with
or 5 weeks
over the last 10 years. The other instances of teams taking on money for a player that is just a dying breed, essentially.
I don't know that I would have like a long list. I could tell you, and like we'll never know exactly because it's not necessarily public all the time of what money changes hands. But an example for the Cardinals I could bring up is like when Dexter Fowler had his last season with the Cardinals and he struggled at the plate, but the Cardinals ended up shipping him to the Angels. And of course, he never really got a chance there because he tore his ACL very early in that season. But with the Cardinals in 2020, that was the COVID year, Dex still had a 706 OPS. Like he wasn't completely unplayable. It's higher than Arenado's current OPS. Now, Arenado is providing a ton more value defensively than Fowler did that season as a right fielder. That was also a very shortened season where Dex only played half the games. But the trade that sent him to LA was basically Cardinals owe him a certain amount of money. It was phrased as they're trading him for cash considerations or a player to be named later. To my recollection, and anybody that wants to correct me on this, I don't think a player was ever named. I think what happened is identical to the Fetty trade that happened this year. Cardinals traded him to the Braves. Some of the money probably got paid down, but is it half and half? No, I imagine the Cardinals ended up still paying Fetty the majority of that contract, and the cash was actually just money that the Angels, or pardon me, in the Braves case with Fetty, money that the Braves just didn't have to, or the Cardinals didn't have to pay Fetty, right? If it was $10,000, that's still technically money that the Cardinals recouped. I think that's what the Fowler trade was. It's largely paying a guy to go away, but you recoup some of it because the team taking him on says, all right, if a guy's owed $10 million, we'll pay $2 million. You guys pay the other $8 million, but you saved a little cash and you cleared up a spot. don't listen to that 2 million versus 8 million because Arenado's not making 10 million. It's like 15 or whatever it is. Or I think it's 15 and 27. He's got 2 years left. Yeah, Arenado's got next year and then the one after that at a $15 million clip. I don't know what the money would be. Would the Cardinals be eating more than half of it as of now to have him go somewhere and picking up Matt Swanson as their return? Yeah, probably. Could Arenado come back, light it up?
So
and
31 million total.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to say like specifically the amount of money, but I feel like the Cardinals would be eating a significant chunk of it right now.
20,
but he's still a Gold Glove
20,
caliber defender, in my opinion, too. There's
like
value to Arenado. I just don't know if you're going to get another team to pay a lot of his salary and give you key pieces in return because of the offensive decline that we've seen.
Then the other half that you were intimating at, just the how often we see guys build trade value in a month.
In fairness, it's probably, we're skeptical about it, but if we're trusting that, hey, the shoulder has been weakened, that's part of the reason that he hasn't hit for power. Now we're going to strengthen that up, let it fly and see what happens. Maybe that's possible, but it's okay to be skeptical of that. I agree with you. Like seeing Nolan Gorman at third base in a year where now it seems really like the standings should not be driving the ship on this conversation. It's okay to, let it see what it looks like with Gorman defensively at third, because that gives you another option for next year if you're thinking you're going to hold on to him. There's also the part of it though, like if Gorman hits well enough now to where they trade him, now that is maybe a guy with trade value. And then, then you go the route of either extending Donovan or continuing to let it play out with Donovan. And now Donovan's got a year and a half left. And if the Cardinals are below 500 next July, then you maybe do trade a guy like Donovan. You do, those are things you can consider as well. The problem with this is I challenge anybody to tell me the starting lineup on day one next year for the Cardinals, because there's a lot of parts and pieces that all feel very similar. It's going to be up to the front office led by Chaim Bloom to know which to extract value from in which other capacities. But I don't even have a good guess right now as to what they might do. We can explore different things as we've just done, but we really don't know. And so that's why I do give the Cardinals a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because if we're sitting here going, well, here's the benefits and drawbacks to plan A, B, C, and D, like they're going to have to choose one of them. And that can be difficult because there aren't obvious answers right now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find a way to get down to spring training next year, because there's gonna be a lot of battles. There's gonna be a lot of things on the margins that change. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It could be fun.
Let's turn to getting in there in the chat. Let's get to a lot of these chats. You guys have been killing it in the chat.
And go with these chats. I still do want to circle back before we clear out of the Cardinals talk to some of the 40-man stuff with Wetherholt. But what do we have right now in the chat?
Let's turn to, with Roberts being a big Donovan fan, would you sacrifice Donny in a trade to LA if it meant that they also take Arenado as part of the deal, similar to what LA did with Price in the Betch trade?
I think LA was known to have really won that trade with Boston. People didn't look back on that very fondly, did they? And that's
a good point.
I don't want to take a player of Donovan's ilk and say, what we could do? We could save some money. Like that's, I think that's, don't let ownership do that, Cardinals fans. Don't let ownership do that sort of maneuver, because what are you gaining? Cost flexibility. Because the Cardinals could DFA Nolan Arenado, and if nobody claims him, they pay him his whole salary, but you've still cleared a spot. And so I don't think it should come to that for a guy who is still playing Gold Glove caliber defense, in my opinion. But if push comes to shove, I would do that before I would say, let's attach one of the better players in a trade just so we can have to save money. That's what I didn't think was fair to Chaim Bloom about that Mookie trade, is that's what ownership sort of, that was an ownership group that said, let's do this because this price money was bad. And so, we want to get out from under that. That's not something that you would do if your focus is just trying to win more baseball games as quickly as possible. At a certain point, don't give ownership the out from, the expenditure of cash, because as you said, Rock, we already kind of project the payroll to go down a little bit, even if they do spend in free agency, with Michael is coming off the books and some other money coming off the books. It doesn't feel like that should be, from fans' perspective anyway, the way that you think about it. It's good business, perhaps, if that's what you're focused on. I think all y'all want to see the Cardinals win games, so I don't think utilizing Arenado and Donny together in that way, I don't think is an effective manner to move this organization forward on the field.
If you add everybody's who goes to arbitration this year, let's say all those total up to 15 to 18 million, they're at 90 million right now in committed money.
And there's some other money guys will probably, some stuff that we're not looking
probably
at.
An option or something that we're not looking at or something.
Yeah, I'm sure. So But that's my point, is like, you should still have some flexibility to spend a little bit more than you did on Maton alone, right? That was the whole, which was a nice signing. They got a prospect out of it. But I think doing that and then adding a couple other Matons to the mix, you could do that and still be in a very okay place with payroll, even without dumping Nolan Arenado's salary. So I wouldn't give the club the out as a fan base to say, yeah, we'd be okay with, which again, they'll do what they're going to do regardless of what is said on the outside, I think. But Cardinals fans don't necessarily need to be taking up that mindset, because I think your team gets worse and payroll goes down. What did y'all gain as fans through that? I don't think anything.
Dylan Hatfield, every move has to be with the 5+ year mark in mind. Gorman is your DH for the future, or he's not part of the team. Donny isn't a contributor in 5 years, so ship him off now.
I disagree with almost everything Dylan said. I don't look at 5 years and say that you're content for 4 years to stink from 26, 7, 8, and 9. Don't look at it that way. By 27, if there's a season that year, you should be able to build up your farm system, because Heimblum's really good at that. He did it very quickly in Boston. You should be able to continue to be semi-competitive on the field. Like, again, even right now in ground zero, year zero of this rebuild that Dylan is calling for, because if you're talking about 5+ years before you care about winning, this would be ground zero for that. They're still about 500 even in this moment. So I don't agree with that. Donovan in 4 to 5 years is still going to be a good player. Like, I give him a 5-year extension, because I think the first 4 you're going to get Brenden Donovan from it. In year 5, you might have a little bit of a tail off, but that's the nature of long-term contracts when you're building around certain players. So I'm okay with that. The Gorman DH part, I also kind of disagree with. I think somebody's got to provide some defensive value on this team other than what they do with the bat. Burley has really worked to try to do that as a corner outfielder, and I think he's tenable out there. Mm-hmm. Herrera may become that in the other corner, but he also may just be a DH. I don't know that you can just allocate DH of the future to Gorman when he's OPSing 740. God bless him. I think 740, if I had 9 OPSs of that, I'd be okay. I wouldn't be over the moon about it. But if 1 through 9, my OPS is 740 at every spot, I can live with that. Yeah, I can't live with that without a guy providing value defensively, though, too. I mean, that's not – so I don't really agree with the Gorman DH comment either. Let's find a spot for him where he can contribute, or he becomes a trade piece if he doesn't fit your defensive alignment.
You mama, I would keep Arenado in just platoon. Arenado, Gorman, Burley between third and DH. Arenado's less exposed. You save Gorman's back, and you have a right-lefty lineup flex based off the matchup. Here's my thing. That is a very sensible text to send in for a team that is a game or two outside of the wild card,
trying to push to win every game possible.
That is a fantastic piece of logic. Like, that's how you should run things. But that's how you should run things when you're still in the hunt.
I don't think they're ready to do that
and
yet.
You're juggling. Yeah. And you're juggling a lot of things. The team where they are now should be making more definitive decisions, in my opinion.
But in fairness, 1 week ago they were, as much as we don't want to admit it, that 3 games out is in the hunt. They were, and they had a schedule that was setting up to really be in the hunt as we sit here on this Tuesday, but they aren't. I think
we can now all agree.
No, I know.
It was different in July, that even if they did make it, they're not playing more than 3 games in an away stadium.
I've actually never agreed with that.
I'm saying now you don't agree with that.
No, I still don't agree with that. If any team snuck in, like last year's Kansas City Royals weren't that good, but they won a series against a team that was better than them. I mean, it can happen, man. And then you end up with multiple home games in the playoffs.
That's not a reason. Didn't the Royals have pitching last year?
They did.
Isn't that why they won? Isn't that why they got in?
Yes.
Listen, if the Cardinals,
you're right. That's a difference.
It'd be one thing. But my point is the pitching with the Cardinals. How are you getting?
We've seen teams slug their way through the playoffs. I'm not arguing that it's likely. I'm just saying I don't like that argument where it's just like, if you got in the playoffs, you're getting swept. We don't have any clue what happens in a short series.
That the mindset.
The Cardinals beat the Cubs, they beat the Dodgers, they couldn't beat the Yankees, but they beat good teams almost more than they beat the bad teams. So I can't say definitively what's going to happen in a 3-game series, and I don't think anybody out there could either. That
it's not definitively. It's totally. It's better than not.
Probability is something that matters. I totally get it.
That's all I'm saying.
And they're not going to make the playoffs this year, so we know that after a week of just completely falling apart. So I understand that. But you mama's text, I think
makes sense.
If you're right on the cusp of it, that's the way to maximize winning. Our point is right now, the rest of the season, maybe you should be maximizing other things, which is tricky because we haven't really seen a full scale commitment to like, we're just going to play the young guys to see what happens. Right. And they're playing a lot of young guys. They just have more young guys than they do spots. So if you add an old guy to it in Arenado, now you're squeezing even more on those young guys. And so that would be obviously at least a philosophical difference compared to what we are saying a runway team should be doing. But they've also, Ollie Marmol is competitive. All those players and coaches are competitive, and they're also trying to win games. So I can't really fault them for that.
Brenden, you talk about making decisions for winning. Here's a decision you can make to win, and that is play with Pick 6 with our friends at DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Right there, the promo code STL Sports right there on the screen for you. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball, and the simplest way to get on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's so simple. All you need to do is pick more or less on the stats, and there's different stats with you can do pitching stats with strikeouts, more or less. You can do hits, runs, and RBI. That's kind of my favorite one to do with hitters. You can do total bases. Just pick more or less on whatever those stats are for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. And of course, you start with 2, you add 3, 4, 5, or 6. You're going to add, you're going to increase the amount that you can win in those cash prizes. Pick 6 is of course available right now in Missouri. You can pull out your phone and play today if you really wanted to. So do not miss out on the fun. Do not settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports right there on your screen. That's code STL Sports for new customers. Get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings, where the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, a couple more points here on baseball before we switch over to football. You have a couple more points to make about JJ Wetherholt and the 40-man.
Yeah, I just wanted, because we talked about, kind of ragging on the Cardinals using the 40-man as a reason not to do the Wetherholt thing. We've talked ad nauseum about the number of reasons that may actually be going on behind the scenes as to why they feel it's not the time to promote him. Let's say there's 7. I don't have the list in front of me of protection year guys. It's both catchers. It's a number of AA pitchers. Can we say 7? And also note,
let's say 7,
that if there's going to be a guy from that crop that doesn't get protected, that's a risk for sure. But if that player doesn't get taken in the Rule 5 draft, when that happens, the team taking the player has to keep him on the roster all year. So AA pitchers may be taken, but they may also not be taken. So I'm not going to guarantee that everybody that we view as, they've got to be protected, will be. But I think a number of those AA starters have real promise, and so I don't think they're going to leave anybody exposed that they shouldn't. So let's say they've got 7. I think the 40-man is it at 39 or 40 as of the moment. I don't believe Zach Thompson is counting against it because he's on the 60-day IL, but let's even say it's at 40 without him. I'm not in the business of saying the Cardinals have to get rid of all these players, but I want to look at some of the guys that we're talking about when it comes to this 40-man glut, and the Cardinals have not shown a real desire to use these guys as ancillary pieces coming up and contributing. I think Michael Ciani has value to the 2026 Cardinals if they get a little bit left-handed and Ciani is a stalwart defensively off the bench. But if they're not ready for that, then there's a conversation to be had when it comes to Ciani. Matt Koperniak is on the 40-man roster as another outfielder who has not really performed in AAA Memphis. I think if he went on waivers, there would probably, what do you got?
I'm counting 39 right now on MLB.com.
Yeah.
And that 39 includes Zach Thompson.
Okay, so maybe it's at 38. I'm not going to
they have 2 spots open right now?
Potentially, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that because we're just kind of generalizing about it. Koperniak, maybe he's somebody that has a bright future, but they're not using him this year, right? And he's another one of those left-handed hitters. Nathan Church, same thing. We're going to this is good for Nathan Church because we can get some runway to see what he's made of. And if he doesn't perform well, maybe that's not a 40-man spot, right? We've seen trades like this before. It was Patrick Wisdom for, I believe, Drew Robinson was the trade at the time. You can make different trades. You can do things. You can trade for a Drew Robinson that doesn't have to go on the 40-man this year, right? And there's a team that says, well, Nathan Church, we would use him as a starting outfielder. So you can find deals like that. But I've already named 3 guys that we're kind of exploring and talking about. Hampson, we know the deal there. I think fine to have him on this year's team, but does he fit in next year? I would be surprised. Fermin, again, he's on the team right now, but they were very reluctant to use him. What's the long-term role for Fermin when you have a Thomas Saggese as well that you could pencil into sort of that utility role? Another guy that could become a trade candidate in the offseason, in theory. Arenado obviously deserves a 40-man spot if he's here, but we're kind of talking as though the Cardinals are going to have to figure out a little bit of a different mixture for that infield. We talked about the catcher situation. I won't guarantee that both Pozo and Pages will be here. I'm not telling you which one they should get rid of or that they should even get rid of either. But do you need 4 catchers on the 40-man? Not necessarily. Ivan Herrera is not among the list. He will be here, though. And then you get into pitching. Zach Thompson has had a long road, man, when it comes to the injuries. I know he was a former first-round pick. If he were to be outrighted, does somebody else claim him? I don't know. And I don't know the update on his health either. But I think we're up to about 6 names that we're at least going, okay, what does it end up looking like? Sam Robertson had surgery, right? I mean, if you're talking about passing a guy through waivers, somebody else would be putting him on their 40-man. Tekoa Roby, I think, is enough to where, like, you've seen the promise in him a little bit more so. I don't think the Cardinals can take Roby off the list. But then there's a bunch of other relievers that you're currently evaluating, like a Munoz, like a John King, like a current. I don't think you would give up on a Ryan Fernandez just yet. But, like, we've talked about a number of names where, am I telling you that they're just going to dump 7 guys from that list off the 40-man? Not necessarily. I think that wouldn't be a total practical use of those resources. But can you make trades? Can you reallocate? Are there things that can be done? I didn't name Miles Michaelis. He's not going to be on the 40-man because his contract is up. I don't think you have anybody else that's like that. But that's the case there. There's names to talk about. I know it would look a little bit concerning to say, like, Wetherholt could come up because there's a spot for him today. The reason that they cite when it comes to 40-man is all those guys that they would have to protect. If it were me doing the job in August, and then I knew it was me doing the job in February, I feel like I could have confidence in my own abilities to maneuver my 40-man to do those things. Part of the problem the Cardinals are running into is it's 2 different guys. It would be Mo making a decision for the next guy, which is part of why I think you have the hesitation. There's the argument to be made that Chaim Bloom should already be charged with some of these decisions today, because then you'd have that continuity of the guy that would be making decisions now. It's not that they can't talk to each other. I'm sure there's been that collaboration, but, like, if we're going to use the changeover as the excuse to say we don't want to saddle the next guy with clutter and with additional decisions to have to make, well, that would be a reason perhaps to pass the baton a little bit sooner.
Fair enough. Let's change things over. I want to tell everybody before we switch over to the Mizzou football talk, there is a special event coming up in St. Louis, and we've already got you a little bit ready for it. If you're one of our winners of our tickets to OAR, you're ready for the Stiefel Charity Classic. And why wouldn't you be? A legendary weekend is coming to St. Louis, so do not miss the Stiefel Charity Classic presented by Compliance Solutions, September 4th through the 7th at the historic Norwood Hills Country Club. Watch PGA Tour champions tee it up and compete. Here are just some of the names that were at the top of the leaderboard last year, along with the winner, Y.E. Yang. You had Bernhard Langer, Stuart Sink, Justin Leonard, Chris DeMarco, Darren Clark, and more. Plus, you can enjoy a live performance by music sensation OAR at Friday's community concert presented by CarShield. I know there's some listeners out there who are going courtesy of this show. Tickets start at just $20. Kids, military veterans, and first responders getting free. Get your tickets today at StiefelCharityClassic.com. Right there on your screen, Stiefel, S-T-I-F-E-L, CharityClassic.com. We will see you at Norwood Hills September 4th through the 7th. And I'll tell you what, last year was a fantastic time. Y.E. Yang, Bernhard Langer, and I think Stuart Sink were all in the final hole. I think Yang and Langer went to an actual playoff, and they were putting for the final holes, and Y.E. Yang hit an insane shot to win that one. So the Champions Tour, an absolute blast over at Norwood Hills, and that concert with OAR, I know I am personally extremely jacked for because I'm a big OAR fan.
There you go.
Let's talk a little bit about the Missouri Tigers. They made the news. They got some hubbub the other day when they announced all 9 captains for the season. That's a lot of captains, but the big thing people were pointing out is that both of the quarterbacks still competing for the starting job were both named captains, and our good friend Frank Cusimano actually caught up with Eli Drinkwitz out at their scrimmage at Lindenwood the other day, and here was the quote that Eli had about the quarterbacks right here up on the screen. It's dead even. We don't have preconceived ideas. We let the QB reveal himself. I think both quarterbacks have had good days. Neither one of them have had a bad day. He said there's been some bad plays,
sure,
but never
a bad day.
Never things in a row happening.
I like that.
That's kept them both in the fight. I know we can win with football games with either of them or both of them. That was Mizzou head coach Eli Drinkwitz on KSDK yesterday with Frank Cusimano. Your thoughts on the quarterback battle, both of them being named captains, and some of the rhetoric that we've heard from Eli throughout this battle?
Everything from that quote I like, except the end where he says both of them.
Yeah.
You don't have like a real, don't have that, and I don't think they will. You may see it against
houses. Each player gets alternating drives.
Actually, against Central Arkansas, I would give the starter 2 drives, and I would give the other guy 2 drives.
By the way,
in the first half.
And we know how Eli does this. If it's alternating drives, that says a lot about this quarterback battle as opposed to the last one where it was first half, second half.
Not a real battle.
It wasn't really a battle.
But what else didn't happen in 2023 to the point of your question? Both quarterbacks weren't named a captain in 2023.
True.
So what does that kind of tell me? Well, the team probably knew, hey, Brady Cook is the way that we're leaning here, right?
Yep.
This year, to give background on this, on my show in Columbia, I've been from the day they got Bo Pribula, I'm like, can you guys stop talking about a quarterback battle? It's Pribula. He's starting. And then we've had this entire camp where they are insisting that it is dead even. It's a dead heat. Now, granted, everybody we've talked to has said, it's like, yes, it's a dead heat. Kind of leaning Bo, though. Like everybody, Gerard Hamilton of Power Mizzou, we had him on our show in Columbia. He said, both guys are absolutely in this thing. To my eyes, Bo is a little bit better in the part that we got to see from practice. So, it feels like dead even with the caveat of, it does feel like Pribula might have a slight edge. But that's stuff that goes on in practice. If they've both been good enough, nobody's had a bad day, I would be fine with letting them play against Central Arkansas and seeing the way that it looks, seeing the way that they compose themselves, carry themselves, run the offense. But you're right. It would have to be, I don't think you do alternating drives because you want a guy to be able to get into a rhythm. I would do 2 drives and then 2 drives. And then from there, you can kind of script it how you feel is appropriate. Ideally, you're blowing out Central Arkansas by that point. 9 days from today, by the way. I mean, it's coming quick. I cannot freaking wait.
Are you taking anything from the fact that one or the other didn't separate themselves, particularly that
I'm taking that at face value that nobody's had a bad day. Like the concern you'd have is like, oh, the quarterback hasn't revealed himself because they both are underwhelming. I am going to take that at face value, which may be dangerous to do because there could be a realm in which if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one, right? That's kind of the old adage. I think both, I agree I trust what Drink is saying when it comes to we could win with either guy. I think the backup this year will be light years more capable than Drew Pine. And Drew Pine won you an Oklahoma game once you kind of let him open up the offense a little bit. So I think they're in a really good spot, but the starting quarterback is the most important position. So I do think it's something that you'd like to have that degree of confidence in, but you're also showing a lot of respect for Sam Horn. Like people have to recognize it was maybe a fake quarterback battle 2 years ago that he was involved in, but he's stuck out through that entire process. He stuck out through a Tommy John surgery. He stuck out through being drafted by MLB and still wants to be a part of this team. I think it's a good message to send. I'm not saying that's all that's being sent is a message to future quarterback prospects like, hey, we'll give you a shot if you stick it out with the program, but really it's not a real shot. That's not what I'm saying. I think they're genuinely giving Sam Horn a look, but they kind of owed him that look. You know what I mean? Like otherwise the guy will have spent 3 years in the program and really never gotten a chance as a highly touted recruit that could have gone somewhere else. Now, granted, Mizzou was the school that said, dude, play baseball and football, pursue your dreams. We'd love to have you for both. And so I think there's a lot of credit to Sam Horn for still being a part of the program in the transfer portal era, in the NIL era, where he could have potentially gone and said, I'm going to go be a starter somewhere that I know I can win the job and I can be guaranteed a job. So there's a lot of credit to that kid. And I think Eli Drinkwitz is the kind of coach that wants to really pay respect to that and say, we're not going to, even if that dope from the radio show counted you out the moment we signed Bo Pribula, we're not counting you out because we value you here. That's a powerful message to send when you've got a freshman, Matt Zollers, who people really like. Because let's say Pribula wins the job, Sam goes to be an MLB pitcher after this year, and you come in next year. If you're Matt Zollers, are you going to leave through the portal because Pribula started for a season? Or are you going to stick around and say, when I get my time at Missouri, I'm going to be great and our team is going to be great. There's value to that, in my opinion.
Can we do a skit where it's Drinkwitz inside the locker room from Mizzou and he's giving him a pump-up speech, and at some point he just goes, "Do you really want to let this idiot be right?" And it's just a picture of you just on the wall in the locker room.
And like, I hope and pray that my idiocy has not extended to that portion of the team that I love so dearly. But if it's happened and I've got to be the butt of the joke in order to propel things forward, I'm going to avoid it moving forward. But you got to own it.
If you actually saw a video screen,
mortified,
like a video camera, like live in the locker room, and there
mortified,
was just a picture of you up in the locker room.
Yeah. I would be mortified, but guess what? I was mortified from the first thing. It happened. In fairness, they really did run a vanilla offense in the first half of that game. But guess what? They opened it up. They said, that's what happened. You probably said, let's let our team win with defense and running the football and being conservative, take care of the football, don't turn it over. And they were not doing well at halftime, and they had to go in and change the approach a little bit. But that might have been the plan all along, and I've got to respect that they know more than me. So I whiffed on that. But to the point of what's going on now.
Want that to be the case.
No, I mean, I would not. I would hate that.
That would make me
but I got to own it. I got to own everybody's got to be responsible for their actions in this world, and you take it for what it is, and you try to be better the next day. That's truly how I feel about that.
There we go. One other piece of Mizzou news that came out, Caden Green was put on the second team preseason All-American squad at the guard position. Looking at the offensive line, looking at the defense, you got into that with the preview over on Southeast Sports Fans. And I'm actually in the chat right now, getting everyone the link. This is the link to the Mizzou preview on Southeast Sports Fans with Hannah Barton, who joined me and Randy last week, who will be joining me and Randy later this week to talk more SEC football. You and Hannah broke down the Missouri preview. Kind of just give us the big strokes that we can find in that video. What are the big things you were looking at? What were the big things that jumped out to you?
So,
obviously the quarterback battle, but what else?
In fairness, in that video we recorded about a week ago, and I can't honestly remember if we got the news about Caden Green probably kicking out to left tackle is what it looks like at this point. And so just kind of identifying in that video more about what we expect with Mizzou. The win total, if you look at various sports books, obviously I think DraftKings still has it at 7.5. Mm-hmm. There are other places that have it at 6.5 with heavy juice on over to where it's like, is it even worth betting it that way? I feel like 7.5 is a super attainable number, but you got to figure out the left tackle and the quarterback to be able to feel that way. But you want to talk about broad strokes. I think the defense is really going to be special this year for Mizzou. And you keep that running back Ahmad Hardy healthy. I think Mizzou wanted to lean more on the run game last year than it was able to, because 2 years ago you had Cody Schrader be one of the greatest seasons at Mizzou for a running back ever. Just what he was able to do and take ownership of that role and be great like he is. And then last year I think they brought in Nate Noel to kind of let that be the guy. He couldn't stay healthy all year to where like they leaned more on Marcus Carroll, who was a good bruising running back, but didn't have the juice maybe that Nate Noel had. We saw Nate Noel go 27 for 150 in the South Carolina game. That was a loss, but that was kind of after he had gotten back to health a little bit. And that was a glimpse at what maybe the offense could have been all year if you had that RB1 that you just knew was just a lightning bolt. Ahmad Hardy is a lightning bolt. And they have the run blocking scheme to be able to, and that's why I kind of think Bo Prabula's a guy that fits very well, because he's got his legs that we've seen at Penn State. Like that's what they used him for. You don't have to turn into Georgia Tech or Navy, but like you could run some option stuff and you could lean on your defense and you can win a lot of football games with the personnel that they have this year. So, I think that's what I'm kind of excited to see about this team. I'm pumped. I think it's going to be a great year.
It has always been, because I know that they've gotten a lot of bodies for the pass rush. We're not worried about the pass rush. The linebacker core, love it. Honestly, anytime you can get the son of a former NFL player like I'm blanking on the name of Trotter's first name. I just know his dad.
Josiah.
I was like, it's not Jeremiah. I know it's a J name. Josiah Trotter. But my big question is going back to last year, was the defensive backfield did not hold up to the
corners and safeties
that we were giving them.
Yeah.
So now they similar group, probably the group that's seen the least change of any Mizzou group, I think.
Philip
from last year.
Well, they brought in Jalen Catalon as like a stud safety from UNLV. He's been around the block, super experienced, was named one of the 9 captains. Philip Mosey, I believe, I might be saying his name wrong, but he's another safety that they brought in. Safeties, they didn't really graduate a ton of guys from that group, but like Marvin Burks is now, a guy that's like, a little bit more of a fight for his spot on the top of the depth chart because of the additional competition that they're breeding within that room. Cornerback, they've brought in guys as well. So like it's largely the same group, but they've added to it and bred additional competition within that group. They've got real talent on the back end of their defense. The problem last year, and I think another year in Corey Batoon's scheme, hopefully with a little bit more experience and a guy like Catalan that can kind of almost be the quarterback out there for that safeties group, and that there were just breakdowns. You remember at various points in the season, like it happened once in the Vandy game. I could probably point to a handful of times where 60-yard bomb and everybody's pointing. Well, I thought you had him. I thought you had. It was just, it wasn't really a reflection of their talent. It was just miscommunication, in my opinion, that somebody got loose and it was dead from the very beginning of the play. I think having the veteran experience on the back end of the defense is going to help with that. I also think, to your point about linebacker and pass rush, keep guys healthy. Dear God, keep guys healthy, because you lost Darius Smith last time in camp. Like those types of things. Damon Wilson comes in. He's going to be part of that rotation with linebacker, defensive edge rush type of deal. I think they're going to have enough depth in those two position groups to be really getting after quarterbacks. And if that's the case, you've got ball hawks on the back end that hopefully it's not a case where, the opposing team has time, like in the Boston College game. Thomas Castellanos just, gets a little bit of time. And oh, by the way, once you didn't get sacked, there's just somebody wide open in the end zone because we had a breakdown defensively in the back end. I think you're going to see guys a lot more comfortable in the scheme this year under Corey Batoon with the veteran leadership of a guy like Jalen Catalan, who I think is a huge piece to this defense.
Last thing, Laird Veach yesterday was on Furrow Field talking about the improvements being made to the stadium, the end zone getting a complete update. The Rocks are not going to be here this year. They will be doing construction up to 2 hours before game time on game days.
They'll still be working on it.
They'll still be working on it and things like that. Just I saw it. Obviously, the stadium looks incredible. And of course, the topic of the stadium is still something that SEC honks complain about with the Missouri Tigers. But your thoughts yesterday with everyone's reaction to Laird Veach's announcements and what they were showing?
Yeah, I think it's just something that people probably hadn't thought about yet, of like, oh, there's literally no hill there to have the Rock M.
It looks incredible.
It's going to be great, especially a year from now when it's really ready to be. Like, the hill will be back. They'll plant some grass. They'll put the rocks.
Picture, you can Google it right now. The picture shows the frame, and there's an open side on the right side of the picture. But you can just picture that there's going to be this, that before the first game, apparently that's going to be all framed out. So you'll be able to kind of see how it's going to look completely full. And it looks like a completely different stadium in a lot of ways.
And it's going to keep the noise in.
Yes.
Like having it not so open-ended, it'll feel more like a bowl, not quite like a Neyland Stadium, but it's like the structure itself from like an engineering standpoint is going to help, I think, with the noise quality, especially once it's finished.
Yeah, I think it's going to look absolutely amazing. Let's close out the show with one more topic, because me and Joe broke this down yesterday, but you obviously weren't on the show, and I really want to get your thoughts here. So I'm going to throw up a map of Major League Baseball.
There it is.
The Athletic put together their alignment. Now, me and Joe yesterday were talking about it based on Rob Manfred's comment on the broadcast, where he mentioned that it'll be really beneficial to the World Series that it's going to be East versus West.
So they want to break down divisions and make it basically based on geography,
which means the National League and the American League
would
dead.
Cease to exist, and it would be the way that NBA does it.
Yes,
right. That's kind of the idea.
The Athletic today put out their realignment, keeping it National League, American League. And the way that they do it is that,
and they're smarter than Manfred probably. So let's see.
And the way that they do it is that the Rockies switch to the AL and the Rays switch to the National League. And so then you have the National League of Giants, Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks.
That's a 14 division out west. Okay.
Out west. The NL North, as the Athletic is calling it, becomes St. Louis, the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Reds. Okay. The NL East picks up the Pirates, loses the Braves, and is now Mets, Phillies, Nationals, Pirates. And the NL South picks up the Tampa Bay Rays and goes Braves, Rays, Marlins, and either Nashville or Raleigh, Charlotte.
Okay, who's the 32nd team? Is Nashville and Charlotte in there?
No. Either or, Nashville or Charlotte is in the NL South. Then we go to the AL, and the AL goes Seattle, Las Vegas, A's, Angels, and then either Portland or Salt Lake City. That's the other expansion.
West. So, like, it's very interesting that through that, and this makes so much more sense than the Memphis.
And then the AL South, by the way, Rockies go with the Royals, Texas, Rangers, and Astros.
And that's the one that I feel bad for, because that's the one where the Royals and Rockies are the fan bases that get screwed, because everybody else is at least paired still with some, with some familiar faces,
natural rivals.
Yeah, and so like that's the part that and like there's a realm of this, Rock, where I could see the Cardinals and Royals end up in a division together, and I think that would honestly be fun. But what I don't want to see is I saw something that was like Cardinals, Royals, Rockies, and Padres. Like I don't know if that was Jim Bowden or who came up with that one.
They need to be hunted down.
That was like, are you joking? What are we doing here? I don't want to say that some organizations should be, curried favor with when it comes to like
there's three divisions
protecting their rivals.
There are three that you have to protect, and this is not being homers. This is just being honest about.
You have to protect Cardinals, Cubs.
You have to protect Cardinals, Cubs. You have to protect Yankees, Red Sox, and you have to protect Dodgers, Giants.
Yeah.
Those are unarguable.
But what if they don't?
Inflexible rivalries that you have to keep.
And by the way, Phillies, Mets, like that should stay.
Yeah, it should.
And they're right next to each other, so it should be very easy to do. My comment was, I wonder if the expansion, like if they would force feed a Western team just to make something like that work, rather than
Portland or Utah.
Because but my thing is like Charlotte and Nashville want to win. You know what I mean? Like,
well, here's the thing: the Athletic didn't even say Charlotte. The Athletic said Raleigh.
Okay,
and Nashville.
Now North Carolina deserves a team. Go look at the map of minor league baseball in North Carolina.
Yeah,
even after like the tear down of sort of like all of those rookie ball teams and the scale down that happened around COVID, North Carolina is still a hotbed of minor league baseball. That state deserves a team. I really think they do. They're great baseball fans.
Oh my God.
Tennessee, I think Nashville, like those would be my top two picks. Is give me one in Nashville, give me one in the Carolinas. But I also, to the point of like Portland, Salt Lake, whatever, that's kind of an area of the country that's also oftentimes ignored when it comes to pro sports. And if you think the fan base there will be ravenous, then I would be for it. Yeah, the comment on screen: Cards, Royals, Rangers, Astros, just chaps my khakis a little bit. You can't take the Cubs Cardinals thing away. I would be okay with, if it's a 14 division and you gotta, push comes to shove, I would be okay with Royals, Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox. I would be okay with that.
Royals, Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox. I'd love that.
Now, granted, I don't know how that makes everything else fit, because you're trying to find some dance partners for the Rockies.
Twins, Brewers, Tigers, Blue Jays.
But if you, and this would be again more along the lines of if you had to totally rethink NL, AL, like let's say Salt Lake goes with Rockies and the two Texas teams. Now suddenly those four can fit together. I don't know which league they'd be in. I don't know which league Royals, Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox would be. But you could go Twins, Brewers, Tigers, Reds, or Guardians, and then you could go Reds, Pirates, Blue Jays, Braves. Yeah. I mean, there are things you could do to not screw over the middle of the country, and that's my main thing. It's like don't Cardinals fans are the ones that would be getting.
You may have just hit the crux of the matter there.
Yep, and guess what? They don't care about us. So just be ready to be absolutely livid with what ultimately happens. But you know what? There's so much that's going to happen, Rock, with Major League Baseball in the next few years. They're going to be talking about this. They're going to be talking about CBA. CBA stuff may actually be baked into this to determine, like, anything goes. So just brace for it, baseball fans. You have been crapped on and crapped on and crapped on, and it's not over yet. So
I got a little trivia question for you.
Be strong.
Because you are correct. Other than two very obvious states, I would say, North Carolina has the most minor league baseball teams with 9.
Yep.
Can you guess the two states that have 10 minor league baseball teams?
I thought you just said North Carolina had the most with 9.
No, I said they have the most other than the two that I said.
There's two
with 10, and then there's they are the only team with 9. But there are two states.
Tennessee has a lot.
It's not Tennessee.
No,
how many does Tennessee have?
I think Georgia has a decent amount.
Tennessee only has 5.
Really? South Carolina has some probably.
South Carolina has 2, 4, 6.
Okay.
10. Come on, think about this one.
Who's got 10 of them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot
Probably
of teams who are playing
California
baseball.
probably has
Ding,
a
ding,
lot.
ding, ding,
That's
ding,
gotta
ding.
be
There's
one of
one,
them.
and then you can get the next one easy too.
Easily? Is it
Yeah, if it's California, then it's
what? You think Texas? You think
no. Texas only has like I think Texas has 7.
Well, what's comparing to California that's I don't know, you might just have
Weather.
to give it to me. Oh, nice weather. Are there that many in Florida? Really?
There are also 10 in Florida.
Okay.
Yes, there are also 10 in Florida.
Yeah.
California, Florida have 10, and then North Carolina right behind with 9.
Yeah.
To your point, an absolute hub for minor league
It's
baseball.
so good. I want to visit some of those stadiums too, by the way. And to the point of, yes, thank you. I miss Florida. To the point of you mama's comment, all the outlets separating Cardinals, Cubs, but protecting Red Sox, Yankees is just so freaking on the nose. So like I said, brace for it, fight publicly in whatever way you can to like voice your opinion out there, and maybe somebody on one of the damn coasts will pay attention to the middle of the country at some point. I wouldn't hold my breath on it though.
And on that pie in the sky thing from Brenden Schaefer, we're gonna finish up this show because you know what? Hope is a good way to finish up the show. Brenden Schaefer, thank you so much for joining us.
I like
today.
false hope even better. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Nothing like a little false hope as well. Thank you everyone for joining us. Chat, you guys absolutely killed it. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Make sure you please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's one of the best ways to support us here at STL Sports Central. It's right there in the bottom corner, that bottom corner. Like, share, subscribe, also hit the bell button. That way you know whenever we're going live. When it comes to Cards 365, which is coming up a little bit later today, Cards post game after the game tonight, whenever you want to know when we're going live, just hit the bell button. That way YouTube's always telling you whenever we're going live. And of course, like, share, and subscribe every day helps us out tremendously here at STL Sports Central so we can keep bringing these shows to you. Speaking of which, we will be bringing you a show tomorrow morning at 10:02, but Randy Carricker will be in this chair. I will be sitting in that chair where I belong, and Brenden Schaefer will be covering baseball.
I'll be at home where I belong.
Where he belongs as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Brenden Schaefer. Thank you to our sponsors today. Check out Stiefel Charity Classic at stiefelcharityclassic.com, STIFEL. If you won those OAR tickets, they'll be coming into your mailbox here before the end of the week. Thank you to everyone who participated in trivia. Keep getting on the Stiefel Charity Classic. It's going to be a great time out at Norwood Hills. And, of course, thank you to our big sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, here every day with us where the crown is yours. Check them out with their Picks 6 app. For Brenden Schaefer, I'm Matthew Rocchio. This has been the Randy Carricker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley on STL Sports Central. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 10:02.